Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, friends. So I'm here with another discussion topic like coronary circulation and fetal circulation. So we'll discuss on coronary circulation. It's a familiar topic to all of you, right? So for coronary circulation, we have like it consists of arterial supply, venous supply, as well as lymphatic drainage. So we'll discuss on each one. So arterial supply in the sense the cardiac muscle is supplied by two coronary arteries, like we all know, right? It is right and left coronary arteries, and both the arteries from the sinus behind the capsule of the aortic valve at the root of the aorta. See in this figure, that is in this image, we can see, right, only the arterial supply of heart, right coronary artery, left coronary artery, right marginal artery, left marginal artery, left anterior descending arteries. So right coronary artery, in the sense it is smaller than the left coronary artery, arises from the anterior coronary sinus. Courses emerges from the surface of the heart between the pulmonary trunk and right auricle. Winds round the inferior border to reach the diaphragmatic surface to reach the posterior interventricular groove, and terminates by anastomizing with the left coronary artery. We'll discuss on the branches, like we have larger and smaller branches. Larger branches in the sense marginal, post interventricular, and small branches in the sense right atrial, infundibular, nodal in case of 60% of cases, terminal. Then areas of distribution, like we have mainly it is in the right atrium, then right ventricles, greater part of the right ventricle except the area of adjoining the anterior interventricular groove, a small part of the left ventricle adjoining the posterior interventricular groove, posterior part of the interventricular septum, whole of the conducting system of the heart except the part of the left branch of a bundle. The SA node is supplied by the left coronary artery in case in 40% of the cases. Next, we'll discuss on the left coronary artery, like it is the largest artery than the right coronary artery, arises from the left posterior aortic sinus. About its courses, runs forward and to the left and emerge between the pulmonary trunk and the left auricle. Here the anterior interventricular branch is given. The further continuation of the left coronary artery is sometimes called the circumflex artery. After giving of the anterior interventricular branch, it runs into the left anterior coronary sulcus. It winds around the left border and near the posterior interventricular groove, and it terminates by anastomizing with the right coronary artery. About its branches, like large branches and smaller branches. Large branches in the sense anterior interventricular branch into a diaphragmatic surface of the left ventricle, and smaller branches like it is in the left atrial, pulmonary and terminal. Then areas of distribution, like we have left atrium, left ventricle, greater part of the left ventricle except the area adjoining the posterior interventricular groove, smaller part of the right ventricle adjoining the anterior interventricular groove, anterior part of the interventricular septum, part of the left branch of AV bundle. Then we'll discuss on the collateral circulation, like cardiac anastomosis, that is a two coronary artery anastomized in the myocardium. Extracardiac anastomosis in the sense the coronary arteries anastomized with the vasa vasorum of the aorta, vasa vasorum of the pulmonary arteries, internal thoracic arteries, the bronchial arteries, phrenic arteries. These channels open up in the emergency when the coronary arteries are blocked. Next, we'll see on the coronary artery dominance. The artery that gives the posterior interventricular artery determines the coronary dominance. If the posterior interventricular artery is supplied by the right coronary artery, like we see RCA, then the coronary circulation can be classified as right dominant. If the posterior interventricular artery is supplied by the circumflex artery, that we call CX, a branch of the left artery, then the coronary circulation can be classified as left dominant. If the posterior interventricular artery is supplied by both the right artery and circumflex artery, then the coronary circulation is classified as co-dominant. So that is a way of classification. Next, on functional division. So large coronary arteries like epicardial coronary arteries lies on the epicardial surface, conduct blood with the little resistance. Small coronary arteries descends into the myocardium and of two types, subepicardial vessel and subendocardial vessel. Small coronary arteries are the principal resistant vessels of the heart. Change in their diameter regulate the coronary blood flow. So next we'll see on the venous drainage of the heart. Like we all know, the venous drainage like coronary sinus, anterior cardiac vein, and venae cauda minor. Regarding coronary sinus, this is the largest of vein of heart situated in the left posterior coronary sulcus. It is about 3 cm long and ends by opening into the posterior wall of the right atrium. Its tributaries are great cardiac vein, middle cardiac vein. The great cardiac vein means it enters the left end of the coronary sinus. The middle cardiac vein means it accompanies the posterior interventricular artery and joins the right end of the coronary sinus. Small cardiac vein, it accompanies the right coronary artery and joins the right end of the coronary sinus. Next is posterior vein of the left ventricle. It runs on the diaphragmatic surface of the left ventricle and ends in the middle of the coronary sinus. Oblique vein of the left atrium. Like it runs on the posterior surface of the left atrium, joins the left end of the coronary sinus and develops from the left common cardinal vein. The right marginal vein, it accompanies the marginal branch of the right coronary artery. Next we'll see on anterior cardiac vein. 3 to 4 small veins runs on the anterior wall of the right ventricle, open directly into the right atrium. Then venae cauda minor, like numerous small veins present in all 4 chambers of the heart, which opens directly into the cavities. So the vein network is considered as an alternative pathway of venous drainage of the myocardium. Next we'll discuss on the lymphatic drainage of the heart. Lymphatics of the heart accompany the coronary arteries from 2 trunks. The right trunk ends in the brachiocephalic nodes and the left trunk into the tracheobronchial lymph nodes at the bifurcation of the trachea. Next is on coronary blood flow. The resting coronary blood flow is about 225 ml per minute, which is about 0.7 to 0.8 ml per gram of heart muscle, or 4 to 5% of total of the cardiac output. In severe muscular exercise, the work of the heart increased and the cardiac blood flow may be increased up to 2 liters per minute. Next we'll see on the coronary autoregulation. If there is a sudden changes in the aortic pressure, coronary vascular resistance will adjust itself proportionally with a few seconds so that a constant blood flow is maintained. Range of autoregulation is 60 mm to 140 mm Hg. So we'll see the mechanism like myogenic response. An increase in the passive stretch caused by increased perfusion pressure causes active smooth muscle contraction. Chemical theory. Decreased perfusion pressure leads to increased adenosine and decreased oxygen, which cause vasodilation, increase coronary blood flow. Endothelium derived relaxation factor, that is EDRF. Hypoxia, ADP, VIP, muscular exercises stimulate vascular endothelium to secrete EDRF, which is potent vasodilator that cause coronary dilatation and increase coronary blood flow. So all this is about the coronary circulation. So we have discussed on the coronary circulation, like we had concept of arterial, venous and lymphatic drainages, and about its auto regulations. Next we'll see on the fetal circulation. Fetal circulation, a small definition in the sense, the circulation of oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood, nutritive material, etc. in the fetus is termed as fetal circulation. The placenta. See, all know, right? The circulatory system of the mother is not directly connected to that of the fetus. So the placenta functions as a respiratory center for the fetus, as well as a site of filtration for plasma, nutrients and waste, water, glucose, amino acid, vitamins and inorganic salt freely diffuse across the placenta along with oxygen. The uterine arteries carry oxygenated blood to the placenta. About this umbilical cord, we have 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. This 2 umbilical artery returns non-oxygenated blood, that is fetal waste or CO2, to the placenta, and 1 umbilical vein brings oxygenated blood and nutrients to the fetus. Three shunts are present in the fetal life, like ductus venosus, ductus arteriosus, foramen ovale. Ductus venosus connects the umbilical vein into the inferior vena cava. Ductus arteriosus connects the main pulmonary artery to the aorta. Foramen ovale, and that is anatomic opening between the right and left atrium. So this is a fetal circulation. Actually we have learned in BSc period like about detail on the fetal circulation, same thing, but here extra structures will be present, and these structures will be closed after the birth of the fetus, like birth of the baby. So we'll see how does the blood moves. So the umbilical vein carries oxygenated blood and nutrients from the placenta to the fetus. Blood continues to travel from the inferior vena cava to the ductus venosus. Ductus venosus, it allows oxygenated blood from the placenta to bypass the liver and puts blood into the hepatic vein. Small amount of blood routed to growing liver. Increased blood flow leads to large liver in newborn. So this is foramen. We all know, right? Foramen ovale. It is a structure which form between this right atrium and left atrium. So that is a direct passage of blood. So it is foramen ovale. What happens to the blood after it reaches the right atrium? So we'll see what it happens. So blood from the right to left atrium through the foramen ovale. Here again it mixes with a smaller amount of deoxygenated blood from the pulmonary veins. So that happens here. So fetal circulation, like some of the blood entering in the right atrium does not pass directly to the left atrium through the foramen ovale, but it enters the right ventricle and is pumped into the pulmonary artery. In the fetus, there is a special connection between the pulmonary artery and the aorta called ductus arteriosus. So this is a picture of ductus arteriosus. So here after it proceeds to left ventricle where it pumped into the heart and brain, the blood contained journey to the left ventricle. Blood is then pumped into the aorta. Blood is circulated to the upper extremities, then returns to the right atrium. So this is a fetal circulation pathway. So we'll have discussion on that. So before birth, the thing happened is we can see in this figure. So next is what about the rest of blood? Next question is how the rest of blood, where it went. So the blood still is in the right atrium, goes in the right ventricle, then to the pulmonary artery. Once there is a most of the blood bypasses the lungs and heads to the aorta through the ductus arteriosus. About 15% of the blood flows through the lungs to the right atrium by the way of pulmonary veins and pulmonary arteries. Small amount goes to the maturing lungs. Rest of the blood shuddered away from the lung by ductus arteriosus back to the aorta. So this is the answer for that question, like rest of the blood stays in the back to the aorta, it goes. So what is happening further? Like some of the blood moves from the aorta through the internal iliac arteries to the umbilical artery and enters the placenta. So that is enters the placenta and start with the maternal circulation. So we'll see the detail on this pathway. Oxygenated blood from the placenta through the umbilical vein, that is, goes to the fetus and leads to the liver of the fetus. Receives deoxygenated blood from the portal vein through the ductus venosus and leads to inferior vena cava. Reaches the inferior vena cava. From the inferior vena cava, the blood moves to the right atrium of the heart, to the foramen ovale, to the left atrium of the heart, and to the left ventricle of the heart. So during the ventricular systole, the two things happen like in left side and right side. So left side, the left ventricular blood pumped in the ascending aorta and distributed by their branches to the head, heart, neck, brain and arms. Right side is right ventricular blood with less oxygen is discharged. Pulmonary arteries through the ductus arteriosus and reaches the pulmonary artery through ductus arteriosus and leads to descent and moves to the descending aorta and the hypogastric arteries and moves to umbilical arteries and finally ends with the placenta. So this is a pathway. Next is what happens after birth. After birth, the thing is once a baby is born and the lungs, renal, digestive, liver all are working, the fetal circulation some changes since they are no longer needed. See, like if the baby is in the womb, right, we for the fetal circulation, as we all know, some of the structures has been formed like foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus, ductus venosus and all. So these structures will get disappeared after birth. So at birth, the closure of ductus venosus will happen, ductus arteriosus will happen, and foramen ovale will take place. So all this all about the fetal circulation. I think all are clear because already we have seen these two circulations before in our BSc time, as well as coronary circulation. We have learned in as a basic. So today we have discussed on coronary circulation, the three things that is consistent in the coronary circulation, and we have much detailed on that. And for application application aspects in coronary circulation, like we have angina, MI, myocardial infarctions, coronary artery diseases. All these are the aspects. Then we have discussed on lymphatic everything, collateral circulations, and how the auto regulations, everything we have discussed. Then detailed on the fetal circulation, we have seen on how this blood receives in the placenta, how it comes, everything we have seen, and we had some of the questions in the mind. So how does the blood moves and all, everything we have discussed here. And we have discussed a detailed pathway of this, like we have oxygenated blood from the placenta through the umbilical vein and reaches the fetus and reaches the liver of the fetus, receives deoxygenated blood from the portal vein through the ductus venosus and reaches the inferior vena cava. From the inferior vena cava it goes to right atrium and right ventricle, to the right atrium and the left atrium, to the foramen ovale, and some of it reaches the left ventricle of the heart. And in left side what happens is it's pumped to the vital organ like brain, heart, arms, head, heart, etc. Right side means what happened, discharging of the lost oxygenated blood, and through the ductus arteriosus reaches the pulmonary artery and reaches a descending aorta, then hypogastric arteries, finally it reaches to the placenta through the umbilical arteries. So all these are the this is about the fetal circulation. So I think you all had some idea on this topic. So if you have any doubt, you can have questions. Thank you all.